Hello, my dears. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com, back again to talk about chronic wellness. Many of you know that my mother passed away just under 2 years ago, a little more than a year and a half. And I feel her absence on the daily. I miss her gentle, loving, guiding, interested participation in my life. And that wasn't always the case. We had many years of being not estranged, but really far apart from one another. My being gay was an incredibly painful and divisive thing in our relationship. And I'm not sure that that was ever healed, but she certainly made great strides to come around and participate and engage in my life after I got very sick. And I think one of the reasons that was true is that my mom also was very sick. And so we had this unbelievable path that we were walking in tandem. And as a Stoic, it was not a path that my mom talked about with other people. She did not share the hardship of her journey. And as her daughter, it took years, but I was able to get her to disarm and speak honestly about her lived experience and talk truthfully with me about the hardship and difficulty and grief and frustration over the ways that these chronic illnesses had control over our lives. So, all this is context about the fact that my dad has been widowed for just a little more than a year and a half. And their marriage had been 54 years in the making. And within 4 months of her death, my dad introduced me to a woman that I believed he was dating as his fiance. So there just wasn't any time to stop the whiplash effect of like, she just died. Who's this lady? You're getting married? And I do not begrudge my father making his own happiness. He has spent much of his adult life caring for my ailing mother. And I don't doubt his love for her by the fact that he has new love in his life. And I do doubt his ability to make sound decisions. So another one of these like raw, bare tendrils in my life, go back to episode 262 if you're wondering what I am talking about, is that my dad seems to be experiencing pretty profound symptoms of dementia, memory loss, Alzheimer's. His mother died of Alzheimer's, and he and his two brothers have lived their life in fear of that disease. And my dad has read almost every study about Alzheimer's prevention. He has onboarded the habits, whether they are nutritional or action-oriented, that any conclusive evidence can prove staves off Alzheimer's. Because my dad is probably on the autism spectrum and is certainly one of the brightest minds of his generation. And his self-concept, the way that he defines himself in the world, is based on his brain. And one of the things that happened while we were on the 2-week break was that I called him for Father's Day. And in the conversation began with, "Happy Father's Day, Dad. How has your day been?" And he proceeded to tell me about, what he'd done for lunch and how he'd spent the day. And at some point said, I've talked to Christine today, but I haven't yet spoken to Annette. And I heard that like cosmic record scratch sound of like, this cannot be happening. He didn't just actually say he hasn't talked to Annette. I am Annette. And to be like, hey, Dad, this is Annette. And to not want to like shame him or dwell in that moment of discomfort. The last few conversations, we'd had big conflict that ended up with us getting off the phone in anger. I didn't want to pursue this path of like, who did you think you were on the phone with when you answered your cell phone and it said Annette? What did you make of that? Like, I didn't want to like start down the path of all the questions of like, how did we get here, Dad? And at the same time, how did we get here, Dad? And so one of these very raw tendrils in my heart is my dad is much further along than I knew. He is not okay. He is very unwilling to allow myself and my sister to support him in ways that feel meaningful. And we are exceedingly unclear about how much of his cognitive function, delays, abilities his new fiance has a handle on. And there's no map, there's no road book, there's no guide about how to walk these waters with a father who already did not have the same emotional wiring that my sister and I do. And because he's no longer making sense, it's really hard to parse which things are his wishes and are the things he's making sense about and which things aren't. So I am hurting and I am confused and I am scared. And I would welcome your stories, your resources, your ideas, because I am sitting here a very brokenhearted, lonely, frightened daughter who just lost her mom. And even though he's right there, has also now just lost her dad. And I want to know how to support him. So that's today's bare root. I'd be very grateful for any thoughts you have to offer. And I hope that you and yours are finding ways to love and support one another. And even in the midst of chaotically hard and confusing shit. Be well.